So my first question is for you, Steven, and I don't want to dwell on this point too much, but I do want to bring it up. Sleeping Dogs was originally a true crime game, and you guys were originally going to be published by Activision. So what was kind of the process like? Like once you guys kind of got canceled by Activision, what was the process like on your end of what happened with the game, and then when it got picked up by Square, what were some of the changes that occurred due to that?
Well, for us, we always believed in the game. The fact that it got cancelled, because it's obviously it's difficult to deal with. But at the end of the day, we had a studio and we had a lot of people like externally that really believed in what we were doing. So when Lee and Square came along and they liked what they saw and we really liked what they had to say, there was an immediate partnership there, which we thought, okay, we can actually make this thing and make it great. I think specifically for me, like looking to a publishing partner that had the open world experience, and they just put Just Cause 2 out, the main mechanic in the game being melee combat and so on, and they just released Batman Arkham Asylum. That for us was incredibly important because they shared the same vision, they shared the same passion as us. As
you mentioned, there's definitely some elements of like Just Cause and Batman. On your side of things with Square, when you guys saw this game, when you guys were looking at it to potentially publish it, and you saw those elements in there, was that consistency with the other stuff that you had published like something that appealed to you guys? And then if so, like, did you have some input into development process on that stuff?
Yeah, I mean, the hard thing about making open world games is it generally all comes together quite late. So you get this period of whether you want to call it uncertainty or something, I don't know the best language to describe it, but there's lots of money going into a game and kind of not a lot to see. You can't really kind of feel everything all meshed together until quite late in the development compared to a regular game. So we've got a lot of experience with that, so we understand what that looks like, and it doesn't scare us, I guess, right? We kind of know what to expect and when. And when we first got in touch with the guys at UFG, one of the most important things to me is that there's so many kind of first-class people in that studio. They've got a disproportional amount of really senior guys that have been there and done it before. I mean, we speak to tons of developers, and everyone tells you, we want to make a 90% Metacritic game, blah blah blah, and it's like there's actually not very many people that have done that. These guys have done it before, and they know how hard it is. It's not easy, and they understand how great games are made. And that in itself isn't easy either. And, I think there's really good parity between the two studios, that we've done that before. We know how to do that. Those guys have got all the right ingredients for the special secret sauce to sprinkle all over the top of it to make it a super fun experience. And it's just a really great partnership.
I think one of the things that immediately struck me about the demo, and obviously being here in Hong Kong helps, but just that like how accurate sort of the recreation and the feel of being in the city of Hong Kong is. What was the process like for you guys, like in recreating that in a game space?
Well, I mean, essentially Hong Kong is the star of the show, right? Like any open world game, the city is your central character. So for us, Hong Kong was at the root of pretty much all the inspiration for the game. Not just a different open world city to go to, but the fact that Hong Kong cinema is something that we were really into at the time, like Hong Kong martial artists, and the idea that we always had was allowing gamers to be that Hong Kong martial artist, action star in an open world. So we spent a lot of time coming over here, going through each of the neighborhoods. The game isn't a recreation of Hong Kong, street for street, but it was way more important for us just to capture the essence of each of the environments and the feel. And that's what you feel when you're here, right? Like you can actually smell it and touch it. And so we took, thousands and thousands of photographs, like tons of hours of video reference. We interviewed a lot of people just to make sure that we paid it the right respect and got those details right. And so we feel really confident when people get in there and experience it. It's going to be like you're in Hong Kong.
Totally. I mean, one of the things I loved in the demo was when he walked down into the street, one of the guys was like soliciting him to like buy a suit, which like totally happened to us like a million times on the street yesterday. So let's talk about kind of the core of this story. You said something interesting when you were doing the presentation, which was that you guys are taking both an Eastern, like kind of Hong Kong cinema influence on that stuff, but also a Western influence. I mean, you mentioned like The Departed. You want to talk about kind of the influences of the story and then like, kind of the basics of it?
I mean, I think at its core, we wanted to create a classic undercover cop story, and that comes with all the tension, all that moral dilemma that you often, that characters find themselves in. They have to go deep undercover, and before you know it, they actually start to like, and befriend like the people that they're actually undercover with. And I think allegiances get very murky, and it's a grey morality. It's not a world of black and white, and that's the intriguing thing about an undercover cop story. So, looking at movies like Infernal Affairs, which pretty much got remade shot for shot, Enter the Departed, that was a great reference point for us. But along with that, the Triad Election series, also then there were Western movies like Eastern Promises, David Cronenberg's Eastern Promises, Donnie Brasco. It was really just going through like all those classic, like those great undercover movies. And then how could we recreate that in a video game?
Cool. One of the other things that, at least for me, stood out as being very, Western influence was that, like, Hong Kong cinema traditionally isn't as violent as that demo was. I think it was awesome, like, when he picks up the dude and, like, drops him on the pole. Like, I really dug that stuff. It was pretty violent. Would you say that was, like, kind of some of the Western influence, like, seeping into the game?
There's definitely a little bit of both. Like, you watch a lot of the Hong Kong action movies, from way back when, and there's a lot of violence in there, but it's very fluid, the way that they bring the environment into play and the way they incorporate it. But definitely for the game, obviously we've hyperbolized things a bit, and there are some Western influences there in terms of the spectacular kills that you can do on things in the environment. So, much like Hong Kong is a fusion of East and West, the game is a fusion of East and West. And I think that's the beautiful thing about the city, and it's a beautiful thing about the game.
You mentioned for the demo, we saw a few different mechanics. We obviously saw the melee stuff, and we saw some of the driving and the open world stuff there, and some shooting. I think one of the big challenges, and one of the things that open world games tend to not always get right, is sort of the balance and flow between all of those mechanics, and then also incorporating side quests and story stuff. How are you guys being conscious of that?
I think the thing that we were probably the most mindful from the get-go, to really capture Hong Kong cinema action, was to have exactly that, like flow between the mechanics. You watch those movies, they're not stop-starty. They're not like, now I'm picking up a gun, now I'm running. So our mantra, right from the beginning of development, was no modes. You should be able to do anything that you can do in the game seamlessly and use anything. So it's not like specific moves are set up for specific missions. I can do that anywhere out in the open world. So with that in mind, it's challenging, but that's where we've invested so much of our time and our effort, just in making sure that action is seamless and moves through.
Just to carry on from what Stephen was saying there, I mean, you saw it in the demo yourself. You can be running along in an open world game, vault over like a table or an object or something, and there can be a bad guy on the other side. Literally smash the guy, hit the guy, catch his gun, and then carry on running and start shooting. I mean, it really is seamless action like that. Jumping back to your question on release date, it's going to be the second half of 2012. We haven't pinned down the exact date, but definitely later this year.
Cool, awesome. Thanks for talking to us, guys. Seriously, we appreciate it. Awesome.
Great.
Nice to meet you.
Thanks.
Cheers.